we can't just do important things all the time without play and without connecting to what supports us. And that's this incredible world that we're so lucky to be inhabiting and that we have to take care of. So this book is, I consider it like a passport or an invitation to, okay, let's go someplace beautiful for a while.
This is A Joyful Rebellion, the podcast that explores that moment you realize the life and success you worked so hard to create didn't come with all the fulfillment you thought it would. I'm your host, James Walters, and I want you to be the author of your own story. Each week, I connect with people who inspire bold answers to the question, what do I do now to create a life I love? If you're ready to start answering that question for yourself, you're in the right place. So let's start a joyful rebellion. Some stories shake your world by being loud, and Carrie Birde's story shakes it by being gentle. A quiet rebellion against the heaviness we've all kind of gotten used to. Carrie is the author of a book called A Small Tale of Uncommon Grace, a novel she wrote in secret for years while wrestling with shame, creative fear, and imposter syndrome, and a lifetime of being told to shrink her imagination. Her work is tender, it's hopeful, and defiantly beautiful. It's the kind of story that invites you to slow down and remember there is still a lot of magic in this world. In our conversation, we get into her hidden writing life, the moment she finally claimed her voice, the creative practices that helped her heal, and how this book became her way of putting softness back into a noisy world. If you've ever tucked your creativity out of sight, this one's going to hit home. So settle in. Carrie's rebellion is the quiet kind, and it might just spark your own. Carrie Birde, thank you so much for being here on A Joyful Rebellion today.
Thank you, James. Thank you for having me here. I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you because this is going to be a little different conversation than I'm used to having. A lot of times on this show, we're talking to people who have been through a major life shift that brings them to a point where they have to figure out, okay, how am I going to decide to live the rest of my life? And a lot of times that's in order to be happier. And sometimes it takes a rebellion to get there. You have to rebel against whatever you've known before or you've understood to be true about the world, about your life. And you've actually done this in the form of a book. As I see it, you've written a book that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but somewhere I saw that it's kind of the response to all of the dystopian, the books that are heavy and the books that kind of paint a world that's not so wonderful. And you decided that you were going to rebel against that in your own way. And you've written a book. It's called A Small Tale of Uncommon Grace. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So tell me, what is the origin story of this book and how it came to be out in the world?
Yeah, this is a book that I'm looking at it. I have it with me here, and I just love it so much. The cover, everything about it is just to see and hold something that I've been working on for such a long time, and to feel that it has weight and gravity in this world is still something that I'm getting accustomed to.
It's a cool feeling, right?
It is. It really is. It's like kind of like being your birthday.
Yeah.
Yay! There's kind of a backstory to it. I have always been a creative person, whether it was writing or drawing, collaging, watercolor. Like I've done lots and lots of different things, all inexpertly. Almost all of it self-taught and figured out along the way, and eventually bumping into people who knew better, who were grounded, who had backgrounds in these different creative fields. And I came to begin writing this book, A Small Tale of Uncommon Grace, sort of in a similar capacity. I had an idea for the book, and I wrote it in secret. Didn't really want anyone to know about it because I had a lot of, I guess, embarrassment, like shame attached and to a lot of the things that I have held dear throughout my life. So I kept it really, really close. I have some very good friends who kind of began to realize that I was doing something and that I might be actually better at something than I thought I was. And they just badgered me in the kindest possible way until I committed to, okay, I'll come and I'll sit at a table with you in your presence and write my book quietly while you work on your creative projects. But I still wouldn't share what it was about. And eventually I had finished it and I let my husband read it. This is all, we're talking about 15 years ago, maybe 10. And my husband loved it. He said, "This is great. You need to show this to your writing partners and get feedback from them." And I did. And again, in the kindest possible way, they told me that, yes, you've got something really good here. It's really special. And you need to sort of you need to stretch it a little bit, put more emotion into it. And I realized at that point that I had a lot of emotional distance from myself and the work because I had not fully committed to it, because I still had this sense of, if I claim this as something I love and people don't like it, it's going to hurt way too much. But ironically, I found that once I rewrote it and once I went back into it and committed to it, that it just got better. When I allowed myself to be vulnerable in that way and to really connect with my characters and my world and my goal of writing this, the book doubled in size. The dialogue got better. There, actually, I don't think there was any dialogue at all initially. It was
Okay.
very trim on that. And now, like it went through another rewrite after that, as things do with books. You have to find someone who's going to edit it, and everybody's got comments. And it's
Yeah.
very hard to decide what comment aligns with my goals and what is something I need to dismiss.
It sounds to me like there was a lot of imposter syndrome at the very beginning. Like, who am I to write a book that anyone's going to enjoy? Kind of a thought process. It sounds like you had some really encouraging friends who said, okay, sit with your imposter syndrome. That's fine, but just come along with me and keep going, keep being creative, keep working on your story. And I'm curious, what is the thing that kind of put you over the line in terms of just embracing the discomfort of having that imposter syndrome and keep it moving? Was it your husband's reaction when he first read it? Because I know a lot of people who might be, well, that's my spouse. He loves me. And even if it's not great, he'll tell me it's great. What was it that kind of put you over in feeling more comfortable to keep taking it to the next level in terms of the publishing journey?
That's sort of a complicated answer. Initially, when we first started speaking, we were like, most people come to this from a rebellion, and that
Mm-hmm.
mine was a little different, and it is, but it has roots in. I don't want to talk about it too directly, but my family of origin, did not understand art at all, did not encourage it. Work had to be done first. Work had to be done a very specific way. If it was not done a very specific way, then there were repercussions. So it was a very stifling environment to grow up in, especially as someone who naturally, I think I thought differently. So it caused a lot of friction. So I think, unfortunately, what impelled me forward and fully into committing to my writing in this book in particular was breaking with my family of origin, which was not pretty and is very traumatic. It was about 5 years ago. And like I said, I don't really want to dwell on the details of that, not to be mysterious or anything, but I don't really want, like, there's blame to go around and everyone is hurt, and I don't want to lay blame anywhere. But unfortunately, in this situation, in order for me to fully step into the role that I wanted, I had to literally put things and people behind me. I still care for them, but I can't occupy space with them. As long as those voices were in my ear, and as long as I was trapped in that role, and, for myself, I say trapped, other people might not see it that way, but I felt very restricted in the role of you have to behave this way. And that is not acceptable. And, oh, isn't that cute? Isn't that quaint? You're doing such and such.
It's fascinating to me how we can have that as children in a family, but then we can grow up, we can go off and do our life thing, we can get married, we can have kids of our own, but sometimes in that familial space, it's like we're all grown up, but the confines of that family structure, you're still right back to being a kid again in some ways, in their eyes. And
Absolutely.
you gotta, yeah, that's part of that rebellion. That a lot in rebellion goes a lot of different levels deep. It sounds like you had to put that piece of the puzzle in place, and there were some other pieces of the puzzle that pushed you or propelled you forward in getting the book closer to being published. What are some of the other, I guess, parts of the puzzle would be the best way to put it, right?
Yeah, like once I made that break, once I stepped away from old patterns, old expectations, the chatter, the external chatter in my head sort of quieted, and I stopped looking at the things that I love with the criticism and shame that was attached to them. Shame is a really big thing. In shedding shame has been huge for me. It's like, no, I can love this. I'm allowed to love this. I'm allowed to love the music I like, the books I like, the whatever it is. I can have it. I can keep it. I can keep those things that are dear to me from my childhood as an adult. This allowed me to really listen to my internal compass, my internal voice, so that I was able to write unfiltered, write in a way that wasn't like, oh, what are they going to say when they see this? What are they going to say when they read this? Oh, they're going to think this, that, the other thing. Like putting that all aside and actually just writing from a place that for me felt very honest. Very honest. Yeah. I think I can encapsulate it in that paragraph, but it's like huge.
Yeah.
Huge in my life because it's had
What?
a watershed effect through other parts of my life where here I am actually sitting and talking to you, which I would never have dreamed of being able to do in the past because who am I to sit and talk with you? You've got this podcast, you've got all these people, you've had famous people. I've been listening to your podcast and I'm like blown away by your guests.
And
So,
every one of them has a really powerful story that my hope is a story is going to land with someone and give them the encouragement or in some ways the inspiration to have a joyful rebellion of their own, even if it's just a little micro one. It's like, okay, I'm going to try pineapple on pizza today. I would never have thought to do that, but I'm going to buck the system, right? It can be small. And what came up for me when you were just saying that and describing the things that were going on for you internally is it's kind of like you were finding your voice. You were finding out who you could be if you were going to put your voice to page. And have you ever heard a recording of yourself from way back and you're like, oh, that sounds so awkward. That just really, I don't know if I like it. And it is an awkward, the first couple of times you hear your own voice on a recording, not just talking because your ears kind of filter it in a different way. But it's the same with your written word. You were finding your voice, and then to give it over to your husband for him to read it, it was really vulnerable because you're like, okay, now they're going to hear my real voice. And then you gave it over to your friends, another layer of vulnerability. And like, okay, what are they going to think? What's the feedback going to be? Because I really like this and I don't want to stop. But you had also started to condition yourself, it sounds like, to not care as much about what other people may or may not say about it. Is that where things really started to propel, where you got comfortable with the awkwardness of your own voice? And I don't mean audio voice. I mean, putting your voice out there on the written page is a whole different thing. And like you said, you were distanced emotionally from it until you started getting more comfortable with that awkwardness, because the awkwardness doesn't go away. I haven't found it to go away. You just have to get more comfortable with it. Would you find that to be the case with you?
Yes, I think so. And I think also there's an egocentric aspect to thinking that everyone is looking at oneself, ready to point a finger, and then realizing that, wait a minute, I've just done something and people aren't crawling out of the woodwork to tell me I suck. It's like, wait a second, that feels good. So there's that, like, egocentrism can work in two different ways. It can make you feel much better than you are or much worse. It's a spectrum like everything. And to realize that the world wasn't really revolving around watching for my every misstep was very liberating. Yeah, that was, I think, very eye-opening for me. To understand something intellectually and to feel it emotionally are very different. You can understand that, oh yeah, people aren't going to look at you. They're not going to do that. But to feel it is so different. And I think with this book and with my writing, with my art, I kept things so close because I didn't want to be exposed to ridicule.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bullying in my background. I don't know if that's coming across. School, home, it was all pretty, yeah. But I would feel like keeping everything close, and every once in a while I would have a moment where I would like show somebody something, and it felt like I describe it as like emotionally flashing people. It's like, what? Here's everything. And then quick, cover it back up again. It's like,
That
holy
is
crap.
a visual I've never heard described in that way, but it is so appropriate because it's like so vulnerable, and then you're like, okay, we're gonna make it go away as quickly as it showed up. I love that analogy. That is
And I'm a hugely emotional person. Like, it's really hard for me not to respond to things emotionally. Even if I'm trying not to, something is registering in my face.
But you grew up in an environment, it sounds like, where that was not going to benefit you. So you had to learn to put the divider up and put the distance there between whatever the response was to whatever the stimulus that you got from outside. And that, it sounds like, carried over into your writing until you realized that that wasn't going to do any favors for the story you were trying to create. Let's get into the story. What was the reason you wanted to tell this story in the first place?
I think that's like everything. There are many answers for it. One is that I really wanted to put something hopefully beautiful into the world. There's so much sorrow and heartache and lots of really important, relevant dystopian fiction available.
The news, for example.
Yeah, well, it's just so much.
No, I haven't watched the news in years, but
I know. I can't
from
watch
what they tell me, it's dystopian fiction.
It is. It really is.
Yeah.
It's like all those books like that Orwell and his friends wrote. It's like instead of being warnings, they're like they're happening now. And it's like, oh God, that wasn't the intention. But I think that's part of the point. Is like we need an antidote for that. We can't function if we're constantly in a state of high alert and panic and grief. And not that there isn't cause for that. I think that there is, but we need to pull back from it once in a while. We need to have a place that we can go and refuel and replenish ourselves and remember that we are connected to an incredibly beautiful world that too often we take for granted. We are trained as we get out of childhood, and you're supposed to grow up and you have to be responsible and you got to go do this and that and the other thing. And we're trained to stop looking at the trees. I'm looking at one right outside my window now. It's like we stop looking at the way the branches are on the winter sky when you see just the structure of the tree. And we're taught like to ignore the little flowers that are growing in between the cracks of the sidewalk. We just have to keep our heads down and do our work because that's important. But we can't just do important things all the time without play and without connecting to what supports us. And that's this incredible world that we're so lucky to be inhabiting and that we have to take care of. So this book is, I consider it like a passport or an invitation to, okay, let's go someplace beautiful for a while. Yeah, it's not that everything is perfect. Not everything is. But yes, it's going to have a happy ending because we need happy endings. I think especially at a time like this when the ending is so uncertain and it looks like everything's going like off the rails in a variety of manners, we need to have something to hope for. We need to have something to come together on and to build toward. And if that's reconnecting ourselves to our environment, which to me is incredibly important, it's been hugely impactful in my life from childhood through today, to connect with the non-human expressions of life that we're surrounded with, that we share this world with. If we don't pay attention to it, then we're not going to steward it. And if we don't steward it, it's going to go away. And then we will really miss it in its absence. And unfortunately, that's often how people wake up to things, when something they love or didn't look at is no longer there. They notice it in its absence. So this book is an invitation to go someplace beautiful where the natural world is its own character, and that my main character, she connects with it directly to the point where she actually, through no reason is ever given, things just happen sometimes, she's able to communicate, two-way communication with pretty much everything. And everything speaks with her. She speaks with it. And how this impacts her life with her parents, her family, her life within her town. What happens when word gets out beyond the confines of her small town and other people see, well, this could be a real benefit to us in this situation. And then not everyone's always happy about what the world has to say through the filter of this woman. We're not always behaving as we should.
How old is your main character, Grace?
She's just turning 19.
Okay.
And this is also like, that was one whole reason for writing it. The other one is because when I was little, I desperately wanted to be able to speak to animals, like desperately. I couldn't understand why they didn't see that I was different.
Yeah. Okay.
And I've seen that there's like been research recently that says that, I haven't looked this up. It's like one of those things I kind of want to believe.
Yeah.
But there's been research that there are some people who have genetic markers where it's not just that they like nature and animals. It's like they need to have animals in their life.
Mm.
And I think that's me. I've got
you.
one on my lap right now.
Oh, wow.
So.
Is that a little, what kind of pet do you have in your lap?
This one is a tiny little dog. Tiny little dog. She came to us a couple of years ago, and she's going to be 5 years old. So she's got her own traumatic backstory that we're not privy to. But oh my goodness, is she the sweetest little thing?
She's happy to be home with someone who loves her dearly.
Yes.
It sounds like you had a lot of the book written, and then you had some readers with a lot of feedback. And what's got me thinking now is, how did you go about it? Almost hearing you describe it feels like you had to maybe dismantle parts of the book to figure out, okay, where am I going to fit some dialogue in here? Given the new skills you were developing, since you sort of opened up your world to feedback at that point, I'm sure your learning and development and just being a writer skyrocketed at that point, because you were not just writing now, you were learning what other people might be looking for in the story. You were learning. I remember the first time I handed over a first manuscript, and the person was like, okay, you're telling me all those things, but you're not showing me. It's like kind of bringing that emotion in that you discovered was missing, because you don't know what you don't know when it is your first go at something. And it sounds like you had to not start back at square one, but you had to start with this thing and figure out, okay, how do I bring in the emotion, bring in the dialogue, bring in those elements that you were getting feedback that were missing, and not feel either frustrated or defeated by it.
Mm. Yeah, I didn't really have to take anything out. That was
Mm.
the beauty of it. I needed to grow the the whole, and I did it in pieces as I went through. I began rewriting from the beginning, and actually, I think my first chapter originally is now something like my 10th. Just building from the creating more of a beginning, meeting where I had been, and then just growing everything. And it happened very naturally. After I went back into it and began writing, I began dreaming about the book and daydreaming about it. Like, I remember distinctly being at my husband, Adam. Adam and I were away, and we were halfway between destinations, and we were stopped at this junky hotel. It was this horrifying parking lot it was just not a pretty place, but it was still bordered by a little bit of wood. And I remember walking, and I'd been stuck in this one part of the story. And in the middle of this parking lot, all of a sudden, bloop, like a character and an issue dropped into my head. It's like it fell out of the sky. And I was like, oh, I know what needs to happen now. I know how to get from this point to that point, how to braid things together. And that's how a lot of it happened. I would write and write and write, and things would just I'm very slow writer, very slow in digesting things. I'm not supposed to say it that way. I'm supposed to say methodical.
it's, it's better branding. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I like it.
So that, being methodical has its pros and cons. And one of the pros is it really allows things to ferment slowly and rise to the surface.
Mm.
And I found that that's what happened with a lot of this till I got to the ending. And I always know where things are I kind of like know what the beginning is, and I kind of almost always know what the ending is.
Mm-hmm.
And I've written another book, which I'm editing now, and I'm partway through a third, which I've kind of abandoned to edit the second one. And I almost always know how it's going to end. It's just, how do I get there? It's kind of like that journey. It's like,
Yeah.
it's not the destination, it's the points in between. So when I finished writing it through the second time and expanding it and like really fleshing out these characters, which had been sort of poetically distant in the past, like my writing about landscape remains pretty much the same, but once I began to flesh out the characters, once I finished all that, I gave it to my friend's daughter to read.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time she was 16, I think, and she read it in like a day or two, and she gave it back. She handed it to me and said, "Please write more." And I just began weeping
Wow.
because,
That's cool.
right, is that not what you want?
Yeah,
Like
that's really, really cool.
heart to heart, like that connection right there, which is what those books that I've loved so much did for me when I was growing up. It's like I felt like these authors had written something that just nested inside my heart, and they're still there.
And that's the thing about a great book is, and especially great characters in a good story, is when you get into that world and you're just part of it, and you feel like over the course of a couple of days you were part of that world, whether it was a different time, different place, whatever. Then sometimes I've gotten to the end of a book and I'm like, oh, like I know there's not another one out there, anything like this, and I'm going to miss this. I'm going to miss being here. It's like going to a really great vacation
Mm.
and knowing that I don't know if I'll ever be back to this place. This was amazing, but I hope I will.
Yeah.
When you said that about your friend's daughter, yeah, I've had that exact experience before where I'm like, I hope this person writes another book.
Yeah.
With yours, it sounds like you've got a main character and then there are people around her who kind of maybe challenge what or make it challenging for her to exist in this world with this new thing that she doesn't know how it came on. And is it kind of like when Luke Skywalker discovers he has the Force and he's a little like stumbling around like a toddler with it for a while until he figures it out? Or is it different from that?
Um, I'd say it's a little bit of a mix because
Okay.
I intentionally want to write about a main character who, instead of fighting with this thing that lands in her lap, she didn't expect this. She didn't, as you know, her family says, oh, well, you know, sometimes these things happen. You have a great uncle who, you know, shone as bright as a light bulb and his, you know, your aunt couldn't sleep because he was so bright even under blankets. You know, these things happen. But instead of being like angry or put upon the typical rebellious teenager, you know, reaction, she sort of goes with it. I was trying to explain this idea of what grace is because I've been in conversation with a friend about this. She talks about grace in this like spiritual sense, and
Mm.
it's something I struggle with, and apparently I'm still struggling with because I thought I had it, and I talked to her again. She's like, "Well, that's not quite it." I'm like, "Oh," so I still have a ways to go. But I wanted, like, what would it look like if instead of fighting with something, this person accepts it and they go along with it without fighting, which is, I think, more typical of us. You know, we resist things. So in real life, we resist things. In stories, characters resist things. I wanted to try it different. So she doesn't really resist it. Her family is very supportive of her. They're concerned. No, don't go wandering off because there's a great big wood, a forest. It's called the Brightwood. And people are a little nervous about it. It's like, yeah, you just, you know, don't spend so much time there. And she loves it, of course. But her family in her village, they, for the most part, they sort of embrace the fact that she has this gift and she becomes a sort of spokesperson for, it's an agrarian society. So for all of the creatures that other people have and work with. And eventually she becomes invaluable to the town's veterinarian. He doesn't push this on her. He doesn't suggest it. He waits for it to be her idea. And then she's like, hey, maybe I can help you out with this. And the real friction of the story comes when she leaves town to help another town out. And then she comes back. But she doesn't know this. You know, we don't know when, like, we involve ourselves with strangers and different experiences the backstories of what's going on. So this unknown element, this sort of hovers over the story, and you sort of wait for it to land until you might even think it's been forgotten. But when it lands hard.
Wow. I love that. When you got to the end of the book and you said, okay, all the writing is done. I've done what I'm going to do. And then you got into the editing portion, and that's really technical. A lot of times you're looking for structure. You're looking for, okay, is the pacing good? And then you're looking for misspellings and anything that doesn't make sense. And you're fixing all of those things. But when you finally just sent it out to be published, did you start to miss the world that you created and worked so hard on and put probably a couple of hours every day into? Did you miss that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When it was done, I think I was pretty much useless for a month as far as writing was concerned. It felt like I'd lost someone, like an abandonment of a relationship. This relationship I'd had with these characters in this world for years was now over. And I had to go through a period of mourning, and then the whole trying to find someone to accept it was its own ordeal and its own depleting process.
Right.
To the point where I put it in a drawer and I just went on to write another book and a half. So I think it stayed in the drawer for about 7 years.
Oh, wow.
I was rejected so many times, and often too slow, too quiet, which is what I kind of think the world needs. We need to slow down and we need to be quiet and listen a little bit.
Yeah, because you had a lot of people telling you it was a great book, but then you were running up against the reality of the book publishing world that wants just basically another rehash of whatever worked great last time, which, as you said, was a lot of super heavy dystopian stuff. And you're coming in here creating some sunshine. And they're like, yeah, I don't know if that'll sell. No.
Right.
Did you ever think about going the self-publishing route in those times?
I did, but to be perfectly honest, it is way beyond my ability. I am not inclined toward the technical aspects of all of that. Like, just me hooking up with you today had its challenges. I had to just try to, it's just not my forte. And there would be a lot of things that would take so much education that I wasn't really equipped for it. I was very fortunate to find a micro independent publisher. I like to call her a boutique publisher. She only does about 3 books a year. And it takes, I think it took me about, from signing the contract, about 22 months, which is pretty good. The thing that was beautiful about Blyden Square Books and Tara Tomzik, who is my publisher, and she also edited for me, is she doesn't want your credentials. She doesn't want your synopsis. She doesn't want a query letter. She just wants the whole book as a piece. And I think that that's how my book works best. You sit with it, you read it, you spend time with it, but a page does not tell you what my book is about. And she read the whole thing. She wanted the whole thing. It's like, yep, I want to do this. And I was very fortunate to be connected with her through a mutual friend, because otherwise I think I wouldn't be here now. And yeah, it's tough. I have incredible respect for authors who consistently knock on doors and can withstand rejection time and time and time again. It is not for the faint of heart, and I'm kind of a faint at heart person. So,
what I'm hearing now is that you've got 2 more projects that you've got in the works. One is in editing, so you finished all of the writing. Now you're kind of in the nuts and bolts part of it.
yeah.
Are those 2 projects anything similar to where things began with this book?
They take place in the same world,
Okay.
but they are independent stories and the characters don't know each other. Although by the time I'm in the third book, I'm kind of referencing, like meta referencing, oh, well, I heard about somebody over there who can talk to anything. Maybe we should go see them. But the book that I'm editing right now, this character has a gift also. That's what happens in this world. And his gift is like a synesthetic response to emotions. So emotions take a concrete form in the world. His issue is that he was born with it and he has a hard time understanding where his own emotions and somebody else's begin. So it's very muddy for him. And again, this is something that for myself, like I said earlier, I'm an incredibly emotional person. I respond very emotionally to things. It's like I often have experienced that myself. And this is my way of playing with that idea, like learning discernment of what is mine and what isn't. And for him, it's something that he does resist, unlike my character Grace. My character Cole resists this. It's been inconvenient to grow up knowing how everybody felt about everything. And often as a kid, as kids are, things come out inappropriately, and this can be very embarrassing. So he has his relationship with his particular talent is not quite as golden.
Yeah.
But he has to really become lost to find himself, his true self, very figuratively and literally. He spends a lot of time lost.
And what I'm hearing in that, kind of the subtext of that, is the fact that you're writing what you know about in a lot of ways. But I'm also wondering and hearing that it sounds like some of that writing could be really therapeutic for you and kind of working out some themes and some issues that have come up in your life. And I've heard of people using their writing as a therapy device. Is that kind of what happens for you a little bit?
I think maybe unconsciously, but
Mm-hmm.
not intentionally. It's something that I realize, like I definitely have a relationship to the issue at hand, love of nature and animals, emotional responses to things. In my third book, my main character has no voice, and I've often felt that I'm not heard. By the time that one's published, people will have heard me. But but yes, I think in a sense there is that germ of trying to figure things out and explore the issue and doing it in a way that is indirect. I think often that's something about fairy tales and folklore and science fiction. We can explore real ideas within a backdrop that is made up, which makes the real ideas much more approachable. I had written, when I was in my late teens and 20s, I had written a huge book, which will never be published. It was 500 pages, and I think I went on to write a sequel, and there's some really interesting ideas in it. But it was, I was in my late teens and 20s, so it's very dramatic, very angsty. There's a lot of like everything. Just if you get the Spinal Tap references, they all go to 11.
Yeah.
But when I went back and read it as an adult, I thought, oh, that's what I was writing about. I had no idea. And it
uh,
became very clear that I was working through very real struggles.
mm.
And I was doing it through the guise and the lens of fiction. And in that point, like real hard fantasy, very, very big. Like the books that I'm writing now, I call them small tales because they're intimate and the world is not hanging in the balance. Maybe for individual it feels that way, but it's not
Yeah.
grand and epic. We're not listening to Wagner here. We're listening to something small, a minuet maybe.
I like it. And, you know, part of the rebellion that we talk about every week, that I talk about with every guest, is putting more of what you want to see in the world out into the world, like taking responsibility for being a contributor. And that's what you've done. I had a guest several months back, and she has a granddaughter who has a specific disability. And she realized that when she went to find a book to read to her granddaughter that represented people with any kind of disability, she had a really hard time finding that. And when she did, sometimes it portrayed them as someone who needed to be fixed, and not in a bad way, but like, oh, we're going to get you better. Or, and she said, you know, sometimes people just have a thing, they don't need to be fixed. That's just, they're in a wheelchair and that's how their life is. So as much as she tried to find something that she could read to her granddaughter that her granddaughter could see herself in, she just wasn't able to. So she ended up writing a book where the main character had, I think it was the similar thing that her granddaughter has. And now she will be able to see herself in a character that is fully whole and thriving and vibrant, and just not like every single other person that she meets. And you've done this in the sense that you notice how dark and heavy and like you said, angsty, a lot of the stories that are going on, we see them on television, we see them in the movies, we see them in books as well, but you wanted to bring something a lot lighter. And I really appreciate you doing that, because it takes people who want to see the world a little bit differently to create a world that's a little bit different for everyone else, because not everyone is going to be a creator. Not everyone wants to be. And I do feel like a lot of people are maybe where you were 15 years ago. They want to be a creator, but they don't want to let anybody else know about it. And that's the person I want to just catch a few minutes of this podcast and hear from someone who was there at one point in their life and now is, you know, 3 books in and probably still going to keep rolling after that. So thank you for sharing what you do and sharing what you've done. I love the concept of this book. I have a daughter named Grace.
Oh.
She can't talk to animals though.
But she wants to.
Yeah, I think she would love that. She would have a lot to say to her little dog. Her little dog's
Absolutely.
old and grumpy, and I'm sure has a lot to say back to her.
I have a character like that in my book.
Okay.
Old and grumpy. He's a wolf, but
Okay.
yeah.
Is there anything that we haven't talked about? You know, for the person driving in their car right now, listening and thinking, oh, that's a really cool thing that Carrie did. Is there anything you would like to leave them about your journey from being kind of a writer in secret to coming through that journey of publishing and now looking forward to your next projects?
I think it's important to keep our hands creatively busy, whether it's writing or drawing or music. I think that's the only way that we can continue to grow creatively outside of a classroom setting. Sometimes I'll get stuck. I can get writer's block. I have, too much stuff in my head, and I find that that's not conducive to writing. And what I need to do often is to occupy my hands. And I do a lot of collage. And I find that the collaging and paper making and origami, the focus that it brings to my hand frees up the space in my head. I started a project in March, I think it was. I wish I had started in January, but we get the weekend edition of the New York Times every week. And I was finding that the news was just so bleak. And I didn't know what to do with it. And I think a lot of people feel that way. What I began to do is took the front page of the newspaper and I shred it and I I shred it, I combine it with water, and I pulse it so that I'm making paper out of it. And I have been reshaping it into hearts, decorating them with collage. I've got about 30 of them now hanging in the dining room, but it's literally reshaping the news. And it's become this sort of I'm a little uncomfortable with the term, but it's kind of a spiritual practice. That's my own hang up. It's not, it's just the terminology. It's just like just a personal hang up it's a residual of my past. But it has been very therapeutic, and seeing how they change week to week and how they grow is just something that I do now. Another one that I have is I have a tree in my yard. It's a little maple tree, little red maple, and it's become my wishing tree. When I have a lot of anxieties, and I've grown up with a lot of them, and they're kind of quieter these days, but I found I can't ignore them and I can't dwell on them. So what do? Now I have origami paper. I've been doing this for about 8 to 10 years, and I write the problem on the paper, and I fold it into a crane, and I hang it in my tree. And that way, I'm not ignoring it. It's in the world. It's there. I can see it until the weather and the elements take it away. This has become sort of a thing in my neighborhood where my friends ask me, and it's become a thing. It's like, could you please put a crane up in your tree for this, for that?
Oh, wow.
And it's learning to accept and translate the discomforts that we have into some creative expression. I just think it's so important. So many of us feel that, oh, I'm not creative. I can't draw a straight line. You hear these
Yeah.
mantras that we
Oh, yeah.
repeat to ourselves that are so self-destructive.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be anything other than something small. And small things become big things. The paragraph
Yes, they
turns into
do.
a chapter. It turns into a book. And the tree with a single crane now has had like close to 200 in them. I want more creativity. I want more people to express themselves creatively, put something beautiful in the world.
I love that. I love that. Well, Carrie, thank you so much for being here on A Joyful Rebellion today. This was a really fun conversation, a little different than the norm, but I loved it. And I think the sentiment of what you just said, if more people were creating things, putting good energy out into the world, we'd have a great world.
Yeah, we still can.
Thanks for joining me today. If something in this episode stirred something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Screenshot it and tag me, or DM me on the socials, send smoke signals, whatever works. I want to know what you're plotting. This show isn't just about listening. It's about building something real, together. So I hope to hear from you soon, and I'll be right here next week when you're ready to keep the rebellion going.